Hello and welcome to this webinar hosted by Smart Cities World and Paradox Engineering. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. My name's Sue Weeks and I'm news editor of Smart Cities World. Smart lighting is one of the more mature smart city applications, but many cities still have questions about can it truly deliver on its promise of creating smarter, more secure and greener cities. We hope to answer some of these key questions this afternoon. In a moment, I'll be handing over to Giulia Arneni-Borghese from Paradox Engineering. She'll be talking about how smart lighting can address some of the critical challenges cities face today, as well as, of course, provide the underlying infrastructure of other smart city rollouts in the future. During the presentation, we'll be running some short online polls, which we'd love you to take part in. And after the presentation, there's a chance to ask Giulia a direct question using the usual Zoom Q&A box. And this webinar will also be available on demand. So without further ado, I'll hand over to you, Giulia.
Thank you, Sue, and good afternoon or good morning, everybody. It's lovely to be here. And let me start immediately by sharing, hopefully with immediate success, my presentation. There we go. So when we decided to have this webinar today, we were thinking actually as a result of a few months of preparation and considerations about how and what to say about this topic about smart lighting. So we're thinking, do we really need to say more about smart lighting? Because as Sue was saying shortly ago, smart lighting happens to be one of the most mature smart city applications. I remember I joined Paradox Engineering almost 10 years ago now. We were on the verge of launching our smart city technology platform. And one of the key points of its value proposition was, besides being open, and we will see more about it in a little time, was that, and still is, the fact that multiple applications can be supported and cities can use it for multiple services. Now, at the time, smart cities were not as well known as today, and cities we would talk to had a hard time grabbing the concept, and most of them were asking us, okay, but where do we start from? Now, this question is not the same any longer because most cities nowadays have started from smart lighting. And in a couple of slides, I'd like to know if you have at all. So after all this time, the question for us was quite natural. Do we still have to talk again about smart lighting? Well, turns out we do. We had a few exchanges with cities we know and that we know less, and we found out that it's still challenging for cities to actually, again, grab the reality and separate whatever goes with the hype from actual concrete and tangible elements that ensure a sound business case for them, and that especially helps them to include sound maintenance cost reduction. While it is pretty known nowadays how to reduce power consumption, one of the most required helps we get, requests for help we get from cities is help us rationalizing maintenance. Then comes everything that is connected to how fast technology evolves and the complexity that cities face by having to conjugate short-term actions and needs, which often are pushed by politics, with long-term investments, which they are vocationally expected to make. So I remember the director of the municipality company in Bellinzona. Here, it's the capital of the Ticino canton in Switzerland. He used to tell us a few years ago, well, I have this problem. Politics expects me to take quick decisions and to act fast. Politics have a year life cycle. Somebody wants to be elected, they want to have a nice program, then they want to implement it, and then they want to be re-elected maybe, which is fair, of course, nothing against that. But on the contrary, he said, I have public money to use, and my citizens expect that the roads I build or the infrastructures I choose to deploy last for decades. So now with technology evolving this fast, how can I make sure what I choose today will be valid, available, future-proof, if you want, over time, meaning that it won't be outdated as soon as my phone does, and more with with everything that is going on and everything that we hear nowadays. The questions that we get are, yes, but we need cybersecurity, and most of the municipality agencies we talk to struggle in with and deep diving into that aspect, giving it for granted that their technology providers take it seriously and invest everything they have to invest to make their technologies safe and secure, but without having the actual possibility to get the granularity to evaluate that part and to value that part also. So in the end, it is also a struggle to identify the best technology partners. Another reason for this is that it is hard for cities to know today, not only what technology will be available tomorrow or in 5 years from now, but also to know what their need will be. So how are regulations going to evolve? What complexities will we have to face? I think that I don't like to talk COVID a lot recently, because I think we're all kind of, tired of it. But I guess that nobody here would have been able to predict all the complexities and all the challenges and all that we would need to do to face such a situation as the one we have been, facing for the last year and so with the pandemic. So it's so hard to predict what is going to happen that it's super hard to identify what is the best technology and what is the best technology partner for this. So now, before going straight and deep into some of the things that we discover the cities are still eager to know, I'd like to ask you one question that was something I mentioned shortly ago, that is, does your city have a smart lighting network in place? Great, so we have 14% of responders who have a fully operating smart lighting network in place. And I'm glad of that, because if I may say, I would really like to, we will have a Q&A or anyway discussion time afterwards, and it would be very interesting to hear if you have anything to say or to comment to what we will be sharing here. Same for the ones that have it in its pilot phase. And we have a fair amount of people who are not planning to have a smart lighting network, which is also interesting, because it would be interesting to know any reasons behind that. Great, so thank you for this. And now we can, as I was saying, deep dive into a few of the questions, not all of them, that the cities we have talked to mentioned as their key concerns about smart lighting. So I guess this is no surprise to anybody, and we are asked, fine, you're telling us that smart lighting is so cool, but can we really save money with it? And the answer is yes. Now, as you will see in the slides here, we are not showing technology or a product presentation. We thought it would be more interesting for you all to get actual information from real life examples. So all the questions that we will share here in the slides will be supported and answered to with real life and real project examples. So yes, smart lighting can actually save money. For example, the city of Gijón in Spain, it's in the northern, west part of Spain. They started with a smart lighting pilot phase of roughly 1,000 remotely controlled LED luminaires already a few years ago. I think it was 2015, 16, something like that. And they calculated they were able to save more or less 100,000 euro per year by moving to LED, by the remotely controlled mechanism, and by the dynamic lighting scenarios. Now, this project was a success, is being a success actually. Gijón is still you know, on the way of their journey to becoming smart. This project is now being extended to include all the 40,000 plus luminaires in town, and other smart city applications are going to also be added. So they are actually experiencing such a saving. The other example that I want to bring you is the city of San Leandro. San Leandro is in California. San Leandro is an interesting city because there are major talks of the city of kindness. They have this politics of kindness in town. Anyway, they invested more than 5 million USD in energy and water saving equipment. Also a couple of years ago, including 5,000 LED street lights. Such street lights are remotely controlled and also have dynamic lighting implemented. They are also offering some Wi-Fi through the same infrastructure in a couple areas of the town, and they also piloted a smart waste application by involving a local group of students of the local university. So why am I mentioning this? They projected this very big, I would say, saving of 8 million and 1.5 million USD positive cash flow over 15 years. Now, a few years have already gone by, and they're confirming this trend. They are not only saving money, they are also investigating how to generate money with the infrastructure. Because when you have an infrastructure and a network that is open and which allows to leverage it for more than one application, it's where you start seeing the possibility not only to save, but also to generate revenues. Now, I would like to, after these couple of examples, I'd like to launch another question, another poll to you all. And I'd like to know, for those who have deployed or are deploying a smart lighting project in your city, what the main goal would be. Yes, and we see that we have fairly good amount of people willing to reduce power consumption and CO2 emissions. Then we have money saving, which is always good. And we have improved quality of service and public safety, beautify an area of the city, and accelerate digital transformation. So this seems to be pretty in line with what we have heard from cities over time. And it is very interesting for us to know that while it is paramount, of course, to help cities rationalize their costs, that is not the only driver. This is the dream of every technology provider, I would say. So you might well be our dream customers. But it's very interesting to have this confirmation. It's also, you will see it reflected in the rest of the content we're going to share. So, and I've seen, by the way, I was looking at the questions that we got. There's one that I will take in a few moments, which asks about trends to combine additional applications in addition to imperative around adoption of urban smart lighting. This is interesting because, as I mentioned, talking about San Leandro and also Gijón, yes, there is this trend. It's not, and it's never straightforward. I would lie if I told you, oh, it's just, you know, so easy that you start by lighting and then you go on with the next one. Everything, I like to say that smart cities are a journey, actually. And cities start with a project which often starts with lighting for a number of reasons. It's very visible, you know, and it's generally quite, I don't want to say easy, but it's easier than with other applications to calculate power savings, for example, and CO2 emission reduction. So it provides the mean to show the actual, you know, return on the investment. But the fact of having, I mean, the fact of starting with smart lighting then drives cities to start investigating other possible smart applications and to evaluate if having them on the same network and therefore under the same control platform or not. Another quite trendy, let me say, application is parking. That's generally the second most requested. It has a direct connection with livability in cities because, of course, as you may know, most of the people driving around in cities are not going somewhere. They have actually already arrived, but they're cruising for parking. And this can make up to 30% of the urban traffic congestion. So take that away with a sound technology solution which drives people to the available spots, and maybe also helps cities to make sure they can collect the money they need to collect, possibly with dynamic fees. Well, that all adds up to the reasons why going to a smart parking solution. The next one that is getting very, very interesting is a smart waste. Smart waste is linked to a number of European and not only European regulations to increase recycling and proper waste management. It is very much linked to, again, cities' livability and the ability to make our cities attractive. Now, we all had a hard stop in traveling. This is going to change hopefully soon. Being able to ensure that our cities are nice and neat and clean and safe and healthy starts to be a very, you know, kind of top of the agenda of cities. How can this happen? By monitoring and planning waste collection. And there are a number of other possible applications. So yes, we're definitely seeing that more and more different services are being investigated and also support a sound return on investment of initially smart lighting platform, which then can be extended to more. So Next point, if I'm able to turn the slide, great. It is pretty interesting that none of you mentioned maintenance of luminaires. It's actually one of the most relevant points that we are asked to help with by cities we've been, meeting and interviewing. Having the possibility to rationalize maintenance is really important. And one of the concerns is, okay, but I go with smart lighting and then what happens? I have a super complex system which makes everything more expensive and more difficult to handle. Well, no, the idea here is not only to have one wireless network and one software platform to handle all the street lights, to monitor and control them. The idea is also to provide, let me say, early detection of non-regular behaviors of luminaires, so that not only a failure is detected immediately, but also city managers can see that there's an out of, that something is not going well, and the system can help them already qualify the problem that might be happening. And this in turn allows to send engineers on site who will mostly be able to already act correctly on the problem, either preventing it to happen or being very efficient. Because one thing is, if you know there's a problem, you have to send out people who have to investigate and may or may not have everything they need to fix a situation. Another thing is, if you already qualified the problem and engineers are going out, already equipped with everything they need to fix the situation. Not to mention the fact that in the eyes of citizens, preventing failures or also fixing them in a very short time makes a lot of difference. Not only because it makes them happier, not only because they start to think, oh, well, my money is used the way I would like it to be, but also because they would actually decrease the number of times they call your call centers to complain about that street light that is off again, or that other that keeps going off or flashing or whatever. It also, such a system also lowers, if it doesn't erase the need to send physical teams, to send teams physically on site every day to inspect the situation of street lights. We know of cities who send out teams of engineers every night to go and inspect one street lights after the other to make sure they're all on. Well, this is a cost. And if you can streamline that, it makes a lot of difference. Does smart lighting truly contribute to urban sustainability? As I was saying before, I would really like to have the point of view of cities that have or are going to deploy a smart lighting solution shortly. From our side, we think so. It does help to contribute to sustainability. We have cities which are measuring 70% less energy consumption every day. We have cities who are actually measuring tons of CO2 saved every year. Or we have cities who are actually calculating a lot operating hours less every year. Now, I don't think I'm saying anything new here to you specifically, because this is all part of what you already replied to our poll. However, it is important to realize that while quite some quite a big part of the savings come from LED adoption, there's another relevant part which can be added up to it with remote monitoring and control, and then with dynamic adaptive lighting, which makes even more difference. Good. Now, going a little bit back to the answer we were giving to the gentleman who was asking about the additional applications. Do we think that smart lighting can be the foundation of a smart city? We at Paradox Engineering like to say yes, and actually have always thought so, because we've always seen, lighting as a sort of natural backbone of the city. Lighting and the street light infrastructure is pervasive, and for this reason is the natural support to a city network. I'll give you a real life story. It's an old one, but it's still effective, I think. In 2012, the company was very, we were still a sort of a startup, and we won a pilot project in San Francisco, a smart lighting one. Actually, that wasn't a smart lighting, that was a smart city pilot project, because the lady handling the street lights in San Francisco opened up a request for a project looking for a technology who would install just one antenna on each street light and handle multiple applications with that same antenna. What was her problem? Her problem was the fact that the MTA, the Municipal Traffic Authority in San Francisco, was asking her for her okay to put antennas on her street lights to monitor traffic, traffic and crossroads. Then the guys who were responsible for water and sewage were asking her to place another antenna on her street lights to manage metering. Then she had another request for, now I don't remember what other application. So her statement was, my street lights are not going to become Christmas trees. So there has to exist one technology which allows me to have one network supporting all these applications, or whatever application I must to host on my street lights. Because clearly the reason why everybody was asking her to host antennas on her street lights was the fact that street lights are everywhere and they are powered. So as you can see, and as I was saying, this is quite an old story. It's from 2012. We are not completely there yet. We know that not every city that has started with smart lighting has gone, down that road and completed it. As I was saying, smart cities are a journey. But this trend to handle and offer more different applications based on one same city network that the city can manage independently is absolutely not only natural, but something that we are asked to enable. And the answer to this is a standard-based interoperable technology which allows cities to select the providers they want, the technologies they want, and to integrate them on one single network based on open data models and open standard networks. When we say open standard networks, we say networks which are like the internet that we all know and that we all use. So the internet is standard. What does that mean? That we can connect whatever PC from whatever brand, whatever phone from whatever brand, whatever hotspot from, you know, whatever hardware from whatever brand. But it's always the same internet. This has to happen and this has to work. And we believe this is the basis for a true smart city. So one city network, which based on the city's choice, based on the citizens' push, based on the availability of technology, based on whatever comes next, can support the technology the city wants to go with, without vendor lock-in, without specific, you know, complexities. The additional advantage of such an approach is that it also allows to innovate. Innovate through public-private collaborations, because, for example, imagine a city where you deploy your parking management sensors and you get information about, is this parking spot free or not? And you can provide that information to somebody who creates an app and sells a service out of that information. He or she sells the possibility to book that parking, and then you get part of the revenues of this company who actually sells the information because you made the investment for the infrastructure and provide the information to the company who in turn provides the service to the drivers. So these public-private collaborations are only possible if you have an IP-based, an open standard-based network. Now, when we talk about openness, there's something which, you know, there's an alert which rings immediately in the head of many people. That is, how about security? Now, I have another question, Nolan, if you can pull up the poll, please, which is if you think that an open urban network can be more vulnerable to cybercrime. I know that we've had a few examples recently, so this is interesting. Yes, you think that openness means more vulnerability. Well, it shouldn't be that way, and it doesn't have to. So my personal suggestion is that you need to bring IT into this discussion, because it is complex discussion, and we all need to be supported by experts. Now, our approach here at Paradox Engineering is first that of moving away from the bastion defense paradigm. That is, we don't build a bastion around our technology. We put cybersecurity into our IoT technology, let me say, from the inside, already in the design phase. And we combine different technologies that make the infrastructure and the devices intrinsically secure. That's not only encryption, of course, we do have it. That's not only hardware security modules, that it is, for example, blockchain. So we make sure that if somebody tries to tamper with the network, and, for example, wants to give a command that shuts off the whole lighting over a crossroad, for example, if that command is not validated by all the nodes of the network, that doesn't go through. Also, you have to consider cybersecurity is something we all need to be very aware of. It is hard to keep up with cybercrime. And that's the ugly truth. Cybercrime is a business. What we can do is make sure to properly vet our technology suppliers to ensure that they are serious about cybersecurity. We had a similar meeting to this we're having today recently, and we asked to those city representatives, how about cybersecurity? How do you handle that? And their answer was, oh, well, that's part of the product. It's the technology provider who has to deal with that. Well, my encouragement is not to stop there. As I was saying, involve your IT guy, get their help to properly investigate and challenge the technology provider that you have in front of you to understand how serious he is and how ready he is to support and to fix an attack. Now, I don't want to be, negative here. We have seen attacks recently. We all need to, when we deal with technology, we need to decide, do we want not to advance because of the cyber risks, for example, or do we want to find an acceptable balance between technology evolution and risks? We can't reduce risk to zero. As I was saying, it's hard to keep up with cybercrime. What we can do is assess if our technology provider is already in the design phase, that is, if they are anticipating every possible move to prevent attacks and therefore leaks or whatever damage, but also how ready they are to fix whatever problem may happen despite all prevention they have put in place. Checking on the time. Good. So on that positive note, let me say, I would close the slides here and see if we have any questions or if anybody would be willing to share their experience, which would also be very interesting, I think.
Thank you very much, Julia. I think we can say that was an illuminating presentation, excuse the pun, but thank you very much. You shone a light on many issues. No, honestly, there were some great metrics in there from City, so that was great. And we have quite a few questions, so we'll try. I think we've got about 20 minutes left, so we'll try and get through as many as we can. One question that came in from a couple of participants, Kritha in Thailand and Stephen, asking if City is already getting savings from an LED switchover, what's the incentive to move to a full-blown connected lighting system?
Well, as we were saying before, clearly LED makes a big part of it. And makes already a big difference compared to previous technologies. Now, there are additional savings which come through smartness, as we said in the slide. I don't remember what number it was. I would also say that there are a few other advantages that are the quality of service. This was also something that showed up in the poll that we had. So the possibility to provide citizens with well-working infrastructure that doesn't require them, for example, to call phone number to say that street light is broken. So the possibility to have a sound monitoring of the infrastructure and proactive control of it. The possibility, as we were saying, the possibility to add other applications. This, together with the savings, provide ultimately better quality of life, because the more advanced services and the more advanced applications citizens can experience, the higher their quality of life gets. And don't forget the point about public-private partnerships. Why do we believe in opening, in providing an open technology which enables this? We might as well hope and wish to be the only providers for technology in every city, which is absolutely a wishful thinking, not only because we don't have the capacity, but because every city is unique in its needs. And there is no single provider who can satisfy those needs. Now, one thing that cities have in common, though, is the need to improve and increase livability and economic sustainability of their community. Now, by choosing a smart technology which starts by enabling smart lighting, as we said, and then opens up to, for example, startups or to local service companies to develop services to provide, that means jobs, that means local revenues, that means ultimately beneficial initiatives for the community. And I believe this is quite a strong message to motivate moving to smartness.
Okay, that's great, Julia, thank you. We've had a few questions about connectivity, so I'll just group sort of two together. Anila would like to know if, when you're talking about the single wireless network, are you talking about a dedicated wireless VPN or a public wireless network that might include 5G? Another one that's come in asking, were any of the deployments that you talked about based on LoRaWAN? I don't know if you'd like to maybe take those sort of together.
So yes, and it makes sense to have them together. Thank you. So our technology platform is based on, it's not LoRaWAN, it's based on 6LoWPAN, which is the NIP standard-based, NIP-based standard. We also support 5G, of course. Among now, I don't want to go into too much technicalities, but when we talk about open network and the kind of network that we support, then we talk about 6LoWPAN and we talk about cellular as well. We talk about fiber optic if needed for the backhaul connectivity. What was the other part of the question again, please?
Whether it was a dedicated VPN or whether, yeah.
Okay, when we say a citywide network, we doesn't mean a network to which every citizen can connect unless the city wants to, okay? So it is a network which is created by street lighting controllers, by concentrators or gateways, as you want to call them, and then the central management system. So yes.
Okay, that's great. So a couple of questions from Karen Leeson, who I think will be of interest to a lot of people. So we'll try and get them in. You probably answered part of this, I think, when you were asked about what's the incentive to going to full-blown smart lighting after L&D. She's also saying that if you've got a standard central management system which can notify you when there's an issue about maintenance, why would a city go to the additional expense of installing a full-blown smart city solution if they're already getting quite a bit out of the CMS they've got? I guess some of that is a little bit like you've said already. Is there anything you'd add to that?
I don't see, one thing doesn't exclude the other. If you have a central management system, that central management system might manage lighting only or other applications as well. So if you want to support or to provide your cities with other applications, you will probably still need to, have a monitoring platform somewhere to control them as well. And don't forget that these central management systems might also help to put together information coming from different systems on field, different sensors, and therefore take decisions based on changing conditions. For example, if we want to limit lighting, we can have environmental sensors which provide information about changing situations and therefore switching on lights based on that instead of based on a mere schedule. So one thing doesn't exclude the other, I would say.
Okay, that's great. She's also asking who retains control of the street lighting column asset, and also who is accessing the column for maintenance of these external services. Yes, I guess it's really about who retains the control of the street lighting column asset in an implementation.
Well, that really depends on the city. We have cities where the control is kept by the municipal agency who's charged of streetlights. We have cities where it is subcontracted to subcontractors. It really depends on, on the specific situation and decisions of every city. And for what we've seen is that smaller cities tend to keep everything, in-house. Bigger cities or cities with bigger implementations tend to subcontract. But again, this is really very, specific, let me say.
Okay. Keith would like to know if you've seen any off-grid solar lighting implemented in any of the smart lighting programs you've been involved with.
Oh, really? Not yet, really. No.
No. Okay. Okay. That's great, Julia. Just another one, a question that we had that came in. We had some questions coming in on LinkedIn as well. It's on the subject of sort of open systems.
Okay.
Are open systems and the whole issue of interoperability as understood as they could be by cities? Do you think there needs to be more education in this area?
Probably so. I think it is probably so, meaning more education might be needed. I don't see it as straightforward as we would like it to be, especially when it comes to everything that is connected to standards. There are a few misunderstandings about something that is standard, and then in reality, it's a standard because it's very common, but it's not really a standard, meaning that it is open. So there is a lot that is still going on there, and that will also happen in the future. I think there are new alliances coming up who commit to work for really open cities, which help city managers to make sure that they don't go for something that they believe is standard and then end up discovering it's not as standard as they wanted. So I think we're not quite there yet.
Sure. Okay. I think we've got time for just probably a couple more. Someone's asking about the role of telecoms companies in this. Is there anything you'd add about that? You could say about that?
Yeah, we've seen different situations here. We've seen cities where telecom companies are very much part of the game. So they see smart city networks as one additional network where they can make the difference, let me put it this way. And so they or some of their companies are, for example, the subcontractors of the services we were mentioning before. We have big cities where it's telco companies ultimately who are the providers of smart city infrastructures to cities. And this may or may not be connected to selling more SIM cards. It's not necessarily always like that. It would be very, natural to think, oh, well, a telco would probably simply put a SIM card in every street light and that's their interest. And not necessarily. There are other places instead where telcos are not in the game, they say they are, and then in the end, you don't really find them you know, as a provider or answering tenders or so on. So it's quite varied.
Okay. Another sort of quick one that we have coming on LinkedIn, talking about limited budget availability. In the report, it talks about how a smart city deployment can pay for itself. Can you just tell I know we've touched on it before, can you just explain a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think the most interesting part of this topic is because it's the newest. It's when the point that we were mentioning before about making these infrastructures not only cost saving, but also revenue generating. So we have cases where the infrastructure kind of pays for itself, like the San Leandro one that we were mentioning. But we see cases where cities start to think about how they can transform the data they gather from their infrastructure into money, actually, into a real value. So it's like having a token that you can use or sell or make money from. I think I made the example about the parking law shortly ago. So this is really, I think, the next step, which makes these projects both interesting and challenging, certainly. That is going beyond cost reduction towards revenue generation.
Excellent, that's great. I think we've just about got time for one last one, which is quite an interesting one. Someone's just asking about additional applications that you could perhaps add that might pick up, it's really looking about public safety, that might pick up on suspicious movement of people. Are we starting to see some of those applications appear now? And is there anything you'd like to say on that?
Well, yes, we've heard and we've dealt with, for example, safety applications through gun shop monitoring. So basically noise sensors detecting a specific kind of noise that would then, of course, inform blue lights, and then also, for example, turn all the lights on in the area for as an initial effect. We are seeing a connection between emergency services and the street lighting network. We are seeing quite a few different requests, again, requests and proposals. Again, it is quite complex to say, oh, you know, around the world, this is definitely the one that everybody's asking for. We learned that every city is unique, and this is not to be, you know, politically correct. It's actually the reality. But yes, a lot of these different technologies are popping up.
That's great.
Sorry, applications.
That's great. So I think we've bled you dry and we're out of time, I'm afraid. Sorry if we didn't get to your question. We can maybe sort of follow up with you afterwards. Just a quick reminder that you can download the Insight report on smart lighting at smartcitiesworld.net, and the webinar will be available on demand at the beginning of next week. That just leaves me to thank you all for taking part this afternoon. Thank you for taking part in the polls. Thank you very much to Julia, who's been given us massive information to think about. And thank you again, and look forward to seeing you at a future Smart Cities World event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.